Taboo Hotel Room, From Brothers to Lovers. Chapter 1. Narrator. In a dimly lit hotel room, where the scent of cologne lingered in the air, Ben and his older brother James were sharing a bed. Ben, at 25 years old with a lean swimmer's body, lay awake as he heard the bed shaking. His older brother, James at 31, was tall and muscular with the build of a soccer player. Narration from Ben. Our family wedding had brought us to a cramped hotel room. As the night wore on, I heard the sound of the bed shaking and realized that James was pleasuring himself beside me. I couldn't resist any longer and asked if he would let me join him. With a mix of surprise and hesitation, he agreed. We sat side by side, watching twin women fucking on his phone as we jerked off together. But it wasn't enough for either of us. With an unspoken understanding, we leaned in and began kissing passionately. The forbidden thrill of exploring each other's bodies heightened our arousal. I confessed my attraction to some men in our family, which only fueled James' curiosity about my desires. Soon, we were sucking each other off with reckless abandon, lost in the moment and consumed by our carnal desires for each other. In the midst of it all, I couldn't help but ache for more, to taste his plump ass and feel him inside me. As the night drew to a close, we both knew that what happened between us would stay between us. But little did I know, this was just the beginning of a forbidden lust that would consume us both. Chapter 2. Narration from James. I sprinted along the edge of the lake, my breath forming clouds in the cold air. Each stride propelled me forward, a rhythmic echo pounding against the stillness of the morning. I was a machine, built from discipline and countless laps in the pool. The water had always been my element, but here on land, I felt just as powerful, just as in control. James, wait up. Ben's voice cut through the silence, his footfalls a quick staccato behind me. Slowing down, I glanced over my shoulder to see him catching up, his soccer-honed muscles working overtime. Come on, little bro, I called out, my voice laced with a competitive edge. Keep up or eat my dust. With a burst of speed, he closed the distance between us, that familiar fire in his brown eyes. We ran side by side, two parts of the same whole, pushing each other to be better, to be stronger. Race you to the pier, I said, a smirk playing on my lips. Challenge accepted, Ben replied, his breaths heavy but determined. We broke into a full sprint, the world blurring as we vied for victory. This was our bond, unspoken yet understood, a constant push and pull that kept our secrets safely locked away. Chapter 3. Narration from Ben. As I looked into my brother's eyes, I could see the same desire reflected back at me. Our lips met in a feverish kiss, fueled by the forbidden nature of our relationship. Our hands explored each other's bodies, seeking solace in the intimacy we could only find with each other. In between ragged breaths, we whispered about the risks we were taking, the societal taboos we were defying. But in that moment, none of it mattered. All that existed was the raw need we had for each other, a need that had been growing stronger with each passing day. As we lay tangled together on the hotel bed, our bodies moving as one in a dance of desire, I couldn't help but wonder how long we could keep this up. How long until our family and friends started to see through the facade we meticulously maintained. But for now, in the dimly lit room filled with our shared secrets, all I could focus on was the overwhelming love I have for him. Chapter 4. Narration from James. I couldn't believe that Maddie had overheard Ben and me talking about our forbidden relationship. The panic and fear gripped my heart as I realized the magnitude of the secret she now held. But what chilled me to the bone was the knowing look in Ollie's eyes when Maddie whispered our truth to him. Ollie's gaze lingered on me for a moment too long, a smirk playing on his lips as he absorbed the information. It was clear he saw an opportunity in our vulnerability, a chance to exploit our bond for his own gain. As the days went by, I could sense Ollie's presence looming over us like a dark cloud. He maneuvered his way into our lives with deceptive charm, all while silently taunting me with his knowledge of our hidden desires. But it wasn't until that fateful night, under the guise of offering support during my father's recovery, that Ollie's true intentions came to light. As he cornered me. Chapter 5. Narration from James. I couldn't believe the words that spilled out of Ollie's mouth, shattering the fragile illusion of normalcy that we had worked so hard to maintain. The air in the room grew heavy with tension as my family processed the shocking revelation. Ben's eyes widened in disbelief, searching for reassurance that this was all a terrible mistake. My mother, Melissa, stood frozen, her hand covering her mouth, unable to speak. And my father, Martin, stared at me with a mixture of betrayal and disappointment in his eyes. I could feel the weight of their judgment bearing down on me, suffocating me with its intensity. The truth was out, our carefully guarded secret exposed for all to see. And it was all because I had made a deal with the devil himself. As the silence stretched on, broken only by the sound of my racing heart, I knew there was no going back. The facade was shattered, and I stood there, stripped bare of all pretense, facing. Chapter 6. Narration from Ben. The atmosphere in our house was stifling, a dense fog of remorse and guilt that seemed to permeate every corner. Each stolen glance between James and me was loaded with unvoiced confessions and forbidden yearnings. Our once effortless bond now felt taut, like a string pulled to its breaking point, ready to snap at any second. One evening found me hesitating outside the public restroom door, my hand wavering over the handle, heart thudding against my ribcage. I knew what we were about to do crossed lines, that it would only deepen the scars we had already inflicted on our family. Yet the gravitational pull towards him was too strong to resist. When I finally swung open the door, James looked up from where he leaned against the sink counter, his eyes shadowed with inner turmoil. Without uttering a word, I shut the door behind me and walked over to him, the palpable tension of our shared predicament crackling in the tight space between us. "Ben," James murmured as I approached him. It started off as a playful dare, a joke gone too far when my trousers slid down my legs. But as soon as they hit the cold tile floor, all laughter ceased and something else took its place, an undeniable desire that had been lurking just beneath the surface. Chapter 7. Narration from James. I couldn't believe we were finally alone together. Ben's touch sent shivers down my spine, igniting a fire that had been simmering within me for so long. Our forbidden love had to remain hidden, but in this moment, nothing else mattered. As our lips met in a passionate kiss, I felt a mixture of desire and guilt wash over me. But the pull of our connection was undeniable, stronger than any societal expectations or family obligations. As our bodies moved together, the pleasure intensified with each thrust. I couldn't hold back my moans, each one louder than the last. Ben's lips traveled down my neck, leaving a trail of kisses and gentle bites. With each passing moment, my guilt faded away. All I could think about was how good it felt to be with him, to have his hands roaming over my body and his lips on mine. But as our passion grew, so did the fear of getting caught. We were reckless, but we couldn't stop ourselves. The thrill of possibly being discovered only added to the intensity of our lovemaking. Our bodies moved in sync, lost in a world where it was just the two of us. And when we finally reached our climax together, we collapsed into each other's arms, breathing heavily. We lay there for a while, catching our breath and basking in the afterglow of our forbidden love. In that moment, nothing else mattered except for us. But eventually, reality set in, and we knew we had to get back to our separate lives. With one last kiss goodbye, we promised to meet again soon and continue what had started between us. As I made my way home that night, I couldn't help but feel guilty for what we were doing. But at the same time, I couldn't deny how much I wanted Ben and how right it felt when we were together. We both knew that what we were doing was wrong by society's standards. But in each other's arms, none of that mattered. Love knows no boundaries or rules. And as long as we had each other, that was all that truly mattered. Chapter 8. Narration from James. The first few months in our new town passed in a blur of unpacking boxes, exploring our new surroundings, and settling into a routine that felt both comforting and unfamiliar. Ben and I had agreed to keep our relationship hidden from everyone, even as we grew closer in our shared space. Our bond deepened, our days filled with stolen touches, lingering glances, and whispered confessions of love. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, Ben turned to me with a solemn expression. "Do you ever miss them?" he asked softly, his eyes reflecting the fading light. I knew immediately who he meant, our family, the ones we had left behind to protect ourselves. I let out a heavy sigh, feeling the weight of guilt settle on my shoulders. Every day, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. But it was the only way. Ben reached for my hand, his touch grounding me in the present moment. Chapter 9. Narration from James. Beside me, Ben leaned against the railing of our balcony, his gaze fixed on the same view. It had been years since we made that fateful decision to pursue our forbidden love, and yet, it felt like only yesterday. Life had thrown its fair share of obstacles our way, testing the strength of our bond time and time again. But we had weathered the storms together, never once wavering in our commitment to each other. Now, as we stood side by side, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. Turning to Ben, I took his hand in mine, interlacing our fingers in a silent promise. The years had only deepened my love for him, solidifying the connection that bound us together. Despite the whispers and judgment that still lingered in the shadows, I knew that we were meant to be. As the city lights flickered to life around us, I felt a surge of gratitude for the life we had built together. Ben squeezed my hand gently, his eyes meeting mine with an unspoken understanding that resonated deep within my soul. We had come so far since those early days of uncertainty and fear, emerging stronger and more resilient than I ever could have imagined. I leaned in closer to him, my heart overflowing with love and contentment. The world around us seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of us standing on that balcony, bound by a love that defied all odds. In that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that as long as we had each other, we could conquer any challenge that came our way. As the night sky sparkled above us, I whispered those three cherished words that held the power to move mountains and part seas. I love you. And in Ben's warm embrace, I found all the reassurance I needed that our love would always endure, shining brightly through the darkest of times.